say one of my dreams is to create a bot that every time someone says female founder, it says male founder. Every time someone says CEO, it tweets back CEO. Every time someone says girl boss, boss bitch, all that stuff, it says boy boss. Like, I want to live in a world where there's not this qualification and it's just founder, and that could go either way, and people just have an equal assumption of what that word means. That said, we're not there yet. And one of the motivating pieces for Brianna, my co-founder, and I to start Pocketed was really this financial barrier that affects women and other equity seeking groups disproportionately. So less than 3% of venture capitalist funding, so VC funding, goes to women. And that is sad, right? Like, that's so small. So it's you have to be so much better than your male counterparts in your presentations, in your pitch, in your idea to capture that money, because the assumptions are so different. And there's a lot of research that shows this. And the other thing people say is like, oh, is that changing? That's changing. And it hasn't changed in 20 years. So that stat has barely moved in about 20 years, which is exhausting. And then if you're a female founder of color, the stats are worse. Like, it's less than 0.5% of funding goes to female founders of color. So, I mean, it gets out of hand really quick. So Brianna and I, have talked a lot about this, and we had both been using grant funding quite successfully. So a couple $100,000 a year. And we started talking to people and they weren't doing it. And so we said, I think there's a gap here, and I think we can fill it. And I think that we can provide an alternative to these awful VC stats by democratizing grant funding and tax credits and other government programs. So that's just a little bit of history of Pocketed. But I won't talk about that forever today. I will get right into it. So this is the topics we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about just the grant basics of what's available in Canada, some misconceptions, because there are a lot and we spend a lot of time saying them. So we always like to cover that. What are the funding opportunities for women-led orgs? How do you prepare to apply? And then how can we help? And how can you use Pocketed to get that funding for yourself? Okay. Whew. So yes, have you ever used a grant? So I'd love to, I can see the chat, right? I'm going to see if I can open it. I can. Yeah. So is it in the chat or Q&A that I see it? Okay. So if you have used a grant or you haven't, I don't know, use thumbs up or thumbs down or Y and N. We'll make it super low touch here. Can you touch one key on the keyboard? Like, have you ever used a grant? I just want to kind of get.
I can see some folks raising some hands, so that's probably a yes.
Okay. I can't see anyone. I can only see you, Ben.
Okay. Yeah, it's a webinar, so we can see in the Q&A though. Sue has not. Evan has not used a grant either. So yeah, looks like we definitely have some grant funding.
Great.
Newbies to the call as well here.
Okay, no, that's fantastic. So it's also interesting because there was a study done, it was either 2018 or 2020. So if that matters to you, email me after and I'll look up the actual date. But it was talking about financial literacy in men versus women in Canada. And one of the biggest differences is that women have a lot less confidence around financial literacy. Which is actually consistent with a lot of other research. So I'm an academic by training, which is going to be obvious because I keep talking about like all the research papers. It's just my life. So generally, women and men actually know a similar amount about finances, but men will think they know a lot and women think they know very little, but they actually know about the same, which is like kind of medium. So both of them are wrong. And a lot, but what happens is if you feel like you know and you feel that confidence, you apply for more things and you try more things because you have that confidence. And so that actually is another barrier that we need to overcome, is feeling like you're financially literate or feeling like you can get a grant. So if you're feeling like you don't, fake it, apply, pretend like you know, and it'll work. Like that's actually what the research says. So just fake it. Just completely tell yourself, no, I know everything about this. I'm just going to apply. It actually works, which is like a ridiculous piece of advice, I know. But this is like a weird case where actually faking it does help you make it. And all of the literature on this supports this. Okay. That's just a little aside because I was reading a lot about this. So we're going to talk about grants in Canada. There are over $5.4 billion in grants alone. Good, I'm glad. Renetta, you and me. So what are grants? They are non-dilutive capital to help grow your business. So non-dilutive means you do not give up any equity in your company. You don't own less. With venture capitalist funding, that is the trade-off, is that venture capitalists will give you money and then it's dilutive capital. So that means your share and ownership is diluted. Grants are non-dilutive, same with tax credits. And they're designed to help stimulate business and create jobs. So that's kind of the goal. How does grant funding work? I have said this a trillion times in my life, and I'm going to say it a couple more times today. I'm sure grants don't fund businesses, they fund projects. So anytime you're thinking about what can I use a grant for, there is no grant out there that's just a pool of money to do with it as you will in your business. They always fund something specific, generally a project. There are some rare exceptions to this, but generally the way that grant funding works in Canada and most of the US actually, is that you pay for the expenses upfront. So if it's a wage subsidy, for example, and they're going to pay 70% of this person's wages or 80% of this person's wages, what actually happens is that you pay the full salary and then you get reimbursed later. And so usually that means you have to show pay stubs. And now if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have pay stubs, I don't have payroll, never fear. We can recommend some payroll apps where literally it's $20 a month. It does everything for you. And it's like super duper easy. Payroll should not be a barrier to using grants for you. I'm telling you, it's like way easier than you think. And so don't be scared of it. And it will do all the tax filings, all the tax stuff for you. Like the software is cheap. It's super easy to use. This is a solved problem. So don't let that scare you. And now if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I need cash up front, there's also lots of solutions to that. So we work with a couple of lenders that will loan you the money and then you pay them back when you get reimbursed. So there are solutions for this as well. So we're really trying to make it possible for people to use this type of funding. What projects can you fund? So R&D, research and development, any kind of innovation, do they charge high interest rates? It depends on the amount you borrow and for how long. So there is an interest rate. It's generally pretty reasonable actually. So like, it's not like a credit card, don't worry. Although interest rates have gone up, I'm sure you guys have heard all the news, but it's usually a very fair interest rate. What projects can I fund? R&D innovation, there's tons of stuff in that kind of realm. And we hear a lot of times people say, I'm not a tech company, so there's no grants for me. No, you do not have to be a tech company to get a technical grant or an innovation grant or a research and development grant. And this goes back to grants don't fund businesses, they fund projects. So for example, a clean tech grant, we helped a food truck get a clean tech grant. And you're just like, what? Because that clean tech grant went to get a composting program into that food truck. And so that grant helped pay for the infrastructure to have industrial scale composting for this food truck. And so that's clean technology, but he's not a clean tech company, he's a food truck. So you really have to think about what are my problems? What do I want to do with my business? And then think about finding the grants for those projects from that lens. So if he were to go onto the platform and look for food truck grants, there's nothing, absolutely nothing. If he were to look for composting grants, there's nothing. So you really have to think, okay, this project is, I really want to compost my waste. And so then you think, okay, what is that? Well, that could be waste reduction. That could be clean technology. That could be, you have to think about your problems in this way. Hiring grants is another one. There are tons of hiring grants out there. And if your business is really small and just getting off the ground, often the hiring grants are some of the only ones that you're well qualified for and you have a high likelihood of getting. And we often get this pushback where people say, well, I don't want a hiring grant. And we say, no, you have to think about hiring grants in a new way. What do you want? And then often they'll say, I really just want to improve my marketing. We're going to say, great, then you're going to hire a marketer with this hiring grant. So you're going to pay the marketer $10,000. You're going to get $7,000 back. It's going to cost you $3,000, and you're going to have this person set up your social media for the next year in, ClickUp or, Later, or some kind of program that, auto schedules your social media. Or you're going to use a CDAP grant for getting your website done. And so you have to think differently about these things, about what is my goal? And then how can I use some of this money to reach that goal? And so it's a different way of thinking about these things. Training grants. So if there's courses you want to take or certifications for you or people on your team, training grants can be a great way to do that. Market expansion. The Canadian government currently absolutely loves when people are going to expand into the US or foreign markets. So there's lots of support for that. And there's still a little bit of COVID-19 recovery, although we're kind of starting to see that kind of end. As much as COVID, it kind of feels like COVID's over, but like it's not, it's probably gonna be here forever. So how much money is available? What can I leverage? $5.9 billion in free money to grow your business. There's a lot that you can leverage generally, and there are some very rare exceptions, but generally, the bigger your company in terms of revenue, the bigger the grants you'll get. So if you're making $30,000 a year, you're probably not going to get grants for millions and millions of dollars. If you're making millions of dollars, you might, right? Like then different programs kind of open up for you. But we've never met a company who is spending money that was not eligible for any grants. So if you are spending money or you're willing to spend money, we can get you a grant. Like it really is that simple. When is the right time to apply for grants? Well, there's a couple of things. So company stage, so pre-revenue all the way to Series D kind of being like the last time that you raise before you IPO. So quite big, really across that spectrum. Again, the types of grants and the size of those grants is going to change and scale as you grow. But there are grants if you are pre-revenue that you can get. Any industry, again, food trucks, e-commerce, tech, innovation, mom and pop shops, brick and mortar, it doesn't matter. The key is to have your project and desired business outcomes. So that's what I keep saying. It's like, if you know you really want your social media done or your website better, or you know you want to improve your shopping experience on your site, or you know that you want to do composting, you have to have this project and idea in mind first, and then find the grants to kind of fit that. That tends to work much, much, much better than trying to do the reverse. Of course, you can do the reverse. So when you make an account on Pocketed, you'll be able to kind of get through and look through all the programs. But yes, it's $5.9 billion per year. Absolutely. So in Canada alone, and then we have grants, and we're not in the UK yet. So that was another question. We're just in Canada and the US, and our Canadian database is very comprehensive, and our American database is still growing. So you can look through in the opposite way, but we find people just kind of overwhelmed. And so if you have a project or outcome in mind, you will get more out of grant funding for sure.
Aria, I'm going to pose a seeded question for you.
Yes, do it.
So grant funding sounds amazing to me. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot out there. It sounds like I can do a lot of my business with it. So why aren't companies in Canada leveraging it as much as they could be? And why did we build Pocketed?
Yeah, because I like to say it's not hard, but it's complicated. Like it's just complicated. So locating grants is challenging. That's the first thing. It sucks. And we did this. You Google a trillion sites, and then you stumble inevitably upon the weird government Mad Libs fill in the blanks grant thing, and and then half the programs are closed and you can't see them and they're old and the provincial grants aren't there. So now you're looking at another one and then you hear about the same 4 grants from 25 people, but you already know about those ones and they're not good fits. And then you're like, that's not adding up to 5.9 billion. And so you're like Googling the crap out of it. And then 40 to 80 hours later, you're like, I don't know. So locating the grants is challenging. So that was like one of the first things we wanted to do at Pocket is just put it all in one spot. There's one spot that is just a complete source of truth. The requirements are unclear. So very weirdly with grants, although it's not that weird if you think about how crappy government websites are generally, no hate to the people who are doing it. I'm sure they're working very hard, but they're kind of bad. They have a lot of circular links weirdly. And I just feel like they don't follow best practices of UI UX. It's like put logins in the normal login spots, not 3/4 of the way down the page in a box that I have to expand. I don't know if you tried to sign into the CRA, but like it's painful. Anyway, so the requirements are unclear. And sometimes this is because it's just like written in like halfway legal language, which is always impossible to determine, or often it's that the actual requirements are like buried in a PDF that you have to download and then read 30 pages of. So it's the other thing a Pocket does is like pulls out those eligibility criteria and just like shows them to you. So you don't have to like go to the website, look around, dig that PDF out, then like read for 30 minutes and then find it. Support is difficult to access. So that's the other thing. It's like we're finding it Pocketed. We have about I don't know, 8,500 users, and people want support across many levels. So some people are like, no, I just want to see the list and then I want to access it. I'm going to do everything on my own. And that's fine. That's actually a very small proportion of people. I would say the next group of people are people who are like, I want to do this, but like, I just want someone to proofread it. I want them to review it to make sure I did it all right so that by the time I submit, I increase my chances. So we can also provide that. And that's when we're like, you know what, I'm super busy. I just do it. I just want you to do it. I want you to tell me what to do. I want you to then do it. And then I just want you to tell me what was successful and what wasn't, and like minimal contact, like take it off of my hands. So we're trying to provide support kind of across that spectrum and things in between. There's like always a combination. So, and the other thing is we work with a lot of partners. And so we're now able to say, oh, based on your business and this grant that you want, this is the grant writer who's so good at that. It has done 7 of them, 6 of which were successful. And like, this is the perfect person for you. So we're able to like kind of tailor that support and give you some options for that support as well, if you'd like. So we're trying to be not only the single source of truth for what's out there and what are you eligible for, but also an easy way to access support.
Thanks, Aria. That definitely answers my question.
Okay, grant missed. I'm just gonna check the, I can check the, okay, I'll answer some of those at the end. Okay, grant missed. There are too many strings attached. Not usually true. Do you have to report? Yes. I would say that I've done a lot of grant reporting in my life. It's not as onerous as you'd think. It generally is more work the more money they're giving you. So if you're talking about some of the smaller hiring grants, $5, $7, $10, $25,000 in there, basically you're going to need to submit pay stubs. Just show that you paid the person that you said you were going to pay. And so if you're using even the cheapest payroll thing like I've been talking about, it's literally click, download, upload the pay stub. They're happy. You're happy. You get the money. It's not really more complicated than that. Some of the larger grants I've worked on where you're being given or granted millions of dollars, it's a little bit more detailed. They want to see invoices. They want to see some of those other things. But that's fair. If the government is giving you millions of dollars of taxpayer money, I think it's really fair that you say, yes, I am willing to show that what I said I would use this for, I used it for. Again, because you're going to write it around a project that you do want to accomplish, it's not that bad. If I'm not in tech, there are no grants for me. I feel like I've gotten my soapbox about this. Again, it's that way of thinking about grants. And so show me a company today that has 0 technical elements. It's hard, right? Like you almost can't think of one that has 0 technical elements. I buy a lot of secondhand things because I think that that's good for the world. And I bought these pants. It's going to a grant. Don't worry. I bought these pants off of this woman on Facebook who lives in Ontario. I'm in BC. I'm actually wearing them right now. They're lovely. And they didn't arrive, and I'd already paid her. And so I was texting her and I was like, hey, I haven't got these pants. It's been a couple of weeks. She's like, I sent them. And then I get a text from her like 3 days later. And she's like, I am so sorry that like your package was in my trunk. I have not mailed them. I do a lot of mailing. I have a small business. So obviously I'm like fully like, okay, well, what's your small business? You know, pitching Pocketed all the time, want to know about everyone's small business. And she's like, oh, I am an Indigenous art creator. I do like hand beaded things. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. You should apply for these grants. Like, how do you sell them? And she's like, oh, I just do it on Facebook. I was like, no, you should use this grant and this grant. You should get an e-commerce site and blah, blah, blah. And so she was like, this is amazing. I'm so sorry. And so she sent me the pants and she sent me some of her beautiful work, and we got her some grants as well. So she got a technology grant and she does Indigenous bead art. So if I'm not in tech, there are no grants for me is a huge myth. You can still even get tech grants, and there's lots of non-tech grants as well. I don't have cash today. I can't use grants. Yeah, then you're going to have to get, then there are lenders to cover that. So again, we have financial partners who will lend against your the awarded grant that you have, which is, we've worked really hard to set that up with people, because it used to be, you can't really get it. It's hard to get loans, right? The other kind of funny thing about grants is that on your financial statements, it's top line money that's coming in. And so as you get more grant funding, like if you get $200,000 in grant funding, your top line revenue shows that you're intaking $200,000, which means next year it's easier for you to get a bank loan. So that they kind of starts to snowball itself. Like as you have more cash and access to cash, that gets better and better. And so if you need to take some debt financing to use grants, that can be definitely a situation. And we found this was a barrier. So right when we first started, we got someone awarded about $75,000. And it was going to cover 100% of 6 months of salary for 3 people at a salary of like $50,000 a year. So she was super excited. And she's like, I don't have $75,000. And so that was when we were like, okay, we need to solve this problem. And we were actually able to find a lender to get her the money. So she was able to make those hires, get that money. She did have to pay a little bit of interest, but she said, that's fine. Like, even if she pays $7,000 in interest, she paid $7,000 and got 3 full-time people selling things for her. She did really well on that. So, it can be a good solution for people. Okay. Funding opportunities, programs to target. So first of all, I want to say, I know that this is about female founders and funds for female founders. So they do exist that are funds that are just for female founders, but it's less than 3% of our database. And it's less than 0.5% of the value of grants that are out there that are exclusively for female founders. So you often hear this all the time. It's like, oh, there's so much money for female founders. There's so much money for female founders. No. And also, don't limit yourself. Money is gender neutral, okay? There's no lady dollars. They're just dollars. So go after all the grants. We're going to talk about a couple that are specifically for female founders. But my message is go after all the money and just fake it till you make it. Pretend you have the confidence of the 20-year-old man. That is advice that I was given. And it's probably a little bit cheeky and of course, a huge generalization. And I get all of those things, but it is true. The research does say that women just feel less confidence. And so they go after less and they don't believe that they can access nearly as much. So just pretend that you don't feel that way and it will work. So there is the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, and this is kind of changing all the time. So it's out of ISED, Innovation, Science, and Economic Development of Canada. And ISED has a lot of programs. They actually fund the superclusters. There's like 4 or 5 superclusters in Canada. They do a lot of work. Part of their strategy is this like WEST strategy, Women in Entrepreneurship Strategy. And they are currently open for getting mentorship. So we're at Pocketed. Brianna and I are big advocates of mentorship, but we also say constantly women need more than mentorship. They also just need cash. That said, part of the mentorship can be like developing that confidence in areas that you really don't think. And we'll also say, Brianna and I would have never been able to build Pocketed, well, one, without our team, but two, without the suite of mentors that we call all the time. Every time we have a problem or an issue or we don't understand something, we've done some venture capital raises, some angel raising, and there's a lot of paperwork and legal things and terminology. And we would just like text our mentors and be like, what does this mean? In the middle of a call with an investor, and they would text us back, it's this. And so having good mentors and people kind of in the trenches and by your side that also are not as close to it as you are, which is really important. So they have this like outside view and who've done this before makes an incredible difference. So as much as we do say we need money, women also need money, not just mentorship. Mentorship is hugely important and incredibly valuable. Startup Canada also has some programs open. So we definitely encourage you to explore their programs through our platform and their website. So lots of opportunities there. Funding, there's also a lot of hiring and wage subsidies that are open or opening for hiring in the winter. So starting January coming up through a bunch of providers. So lots of things kind of on the horizon. She loves tech. Apply. This is the thing. This is the other thing is that Pocketed and Brianna and I have applied. How many things have we applied to, Ben? Like, I feel like we're constantly applying to things. Every competition, every award, every program, everything. Our team, we're like, draft this, send this, get this in, because it helps with so many things. Like you might get cash, you're going to get exposure, you're going to meet people, you're going to, like one of the things that Brianna talked about has led to so many partnerships, and you get contacted by people you never would have met otherwise. So again, it's that confidence piece of go to competitions, go to pitch competitions, put your company out there and like your name in the hat. Like, it's really, really important that you just start participating in this world and really amazing things will happen. Securing funds, your guide. So let's talk about how we can do that. What do you need? You need all your basic business info and a source of centralized documentation. So when you sign up for Pocketed Plus, which is one of our paid subscriptions, we have a little tool that centralizes all that info for you. Things like your business number, company description, address, contact info, incorporation date. These are things that I don't have memorized. Like, I don't remember the date that we incorporated ever. And I've had to fill it out like 18 trillion times, or like your CRA number, like just generally don't have those things memorized. And centralizing them really means, one, you're ready to apply. And two, it takes it from, you can go back to that slide, Ben. I'm all good. Centralizing them really means that instead of it taking you an hour to fill out this form, now it takes you 5 minutes because everything is on spot. You just copy and paste it in and like you're done. So it doesn't really need to be more complicated than that. And so there is this whole thing of just getting organized. And again, Pocketed does provide tools that just help you be organized. So instead of spending hours, you're spending minutes and you're just getting these things done. Position your organization. So navigate those tricky requirements, look through the eligibility. If you're still unclear, there's lots of ways to interact with people at Pocketed. So we have free office hours. You can pay for one-on-one consultations with grant experts that will walk you through and say, yes, you're technically eligible, but I don't think you're going to get it. I think that if you're going to invest some time, you should actually go over here. Can also help with your positioning. So the role versus the organization. So it's the BC Jobs and Growth Fund, but there's a similar program in Ontario. And the goal of that fund is to create jobs. It's to create jobs. So you can create these jobs. you have to think about how can you pitch your business to meet their goals. So you want to think, I want to do this project, but how can I use language that will make them be excited about this given their mandate? So that's another thing that Pocketed has just launched is we're providing keywords for programs. So it's like, use these words. And you think, that's silly, but it's not. Because you have to think about how many different applications the reviewer at the grant agency is going to look at. And so if their mandate is to help newcomers to Canada find jobs, and you start talking about immigrant workers, you're not going to get it. You're not using their language. You're not speaking their language. And you're just making it harder for them. They're, to a certain extent, their first kind of pass is like, do they check the boxes of what we're looking for before they're going to dive deeper? And one of the ways to just get like, yeah, they are, it's worth diving deeper into this application is to make it very clear that you are meeting their goals and doing that in their language. So, it's a lot about this positioning of like, I want to do this thing. How can I work it into their goals? Just like the composting program gets worked into clean tech. Now, all of a sudden, you're eligible for this clean tech grant because that's how that application was positioned. And again, we can also provide support on this positioning.
So, all right, this has been fantastic. A ton of super valuable information. If it's okay with you, I'd love to give you a break from talking and maybe just show everyone on the call today a quick walkthrough of Pocketed, and I can send a link in the chat because we've had a few folks ask about where can they find these grants and these funding opportunities.
Absolutely. Why don't you do that? And then we'll go through the Q&A and the chat questions.
Yeah, that's amazing. That sounds good to me. So I'm going to stop the share for just a second. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to post a link in the chat for everybody. I know we had a few notes coming through asking about, oh, well, where can we find all these excellent programs that Aria is talking about? And so by visiting this link right here, you are going to be able to create your Pocketed account. And you're also going to have the Innovation Factory referral code automatically applied. So do ensure that you use this link specifically. And that code's actually going to get you some discounts. So it's going to get you a discount on the Pocketed Plus version of the platform that Aria has been talking about. It's going to be a 25% discount, which is really exciting. And it's also going to get you a slight discount on our Pocketed Plus Concierge, which is a brand new offering as well, where you get some more tailored direct support. So do visit that link to set up your account. But I'm going to pull up Pocketed on my screen, and we're going to take a look together. Now we're going to look at Pocketed Plus, which is our middle offering. It is $49 a month, and you do get that 25% discount. So we're going to take a look at that together so we can see all of the great features that you do have access to. So if you can't see my screen, just jump in and let me know. Looks good. Okay, perfect. So this is your welcome dashboard. Obviously, a lot going on here, a lot of super exciting things that we can see right off the bat. I mean, I see on the top right, I'm eligible for over $3 million in the next 30 days. That is very exciting. Now, how do we get here? When you visit the link that I shared in the chat, when you come and you sign up to Pocketed, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to build a business profile. So you're going to fill in some details, some of the ones that Aria was talking about earlier, your incorporation status, your incorporation date, how many employees do you have, what's your annual revenue. These things are going to allow our back-end algorithm, our back-end program to match you with eligible funds and connect you with funds that you may be able to apply for. Now, obviously, there are going to be some next steps on that in terms of figuring out, okay, are they applicable to the projects you're executing and all of these next steps? But it's going to show you these are the funds that you could potentially take advantage of in your business. So we've got some things on here. We've got grants due in the next 30 days. We also have some really helpful quick start filters down at the bottom here under Explore My Grants. So we can see things like, a marketing project or grants our CTO loves for building tech stacks. Very helpful. We have our CTO on the call here today. So we can quickly just click into any one of these and see an even shorter list of grants for us. But to view all of the grants that we've connected with, we'll just want to click on Explore Funding. And this is going to bring us to our funding dashboard. Now, on our funding dashboard, there are a couple things we're going to be able to do. The first thing I'm going to point out is this is where we access all of our matches. So right up at the top here, I can see I've matched with 184 funding opportunities. That is super exciting. That is a lot of funding opportunities that I can potentially take advantage of. And I can basically work through this list and click into any single one of them to find out more information. So I can see things like, what's the program about? How much funding is it? Who's it funded by? Then if I scroll down here, I can see things like company requirements, eligible activities, as well as things like deadlines. So all of the information I need to know to feel confident that this is a program I want to apply to. Of course, if I want to apply to it, I can go ahead and apply on my own, or I can engage a grant writer simply by clicking on Hire a Grant Writer to connect with a professional. Now we have some other really helpful tools on the screen here, and these are going to be part of that Pocketed Plus tier, so that $49 a month, 25% discount tier. The first thing we see is our Pocketed Grant Intelligence. Now, Pocketed Plus is really your helping hand to curate your strongest applications and increase your chances of success in applying. And so the first thing we give you to help with that is going to be Pocketed Grant Intelligence. So for every single program that you match with, for every single program in the Pocketed platform, you are going to get specific and relevant insights about that grant. And this is going to be based on prior applicants' insight on the application process, the outcome of that application process. An example that I know off the top of my head, the CanExport program talks about how even though the application period is over a month, only applications in the first 2 weeks were considered for approval, right? And that's very helpful for you to know, because then as soon as CanExport opens, you want to apply within that first week or 2 week period, right? And this is something you're not going to find elsewhere, only within Pocketed Intelligence. Now, you're also going to get that keyword element that Aria talked about. So specific keywords that these grant administrators are going to be looking for in your application. This is going to help it stand out and really fit in. And then finally, at the bottom, you're going to get specific resources that are tied to this grant that we're looking at. So right now we're looking at the NRC IRAP program. We're going to get things like, the Innovator's Guide to IRAP. These are links out to helpful resources that, again, will help you position yourself and feel prepared to apply to that grant. Now you may be thinking, okay, Ben, we've got 184 matches here. That's a lot to look through still, right? How are we going to narrow this down? Well, we've got more than one way that you can do this. So the first thing is that you can search for specific programs, but that's not that helpful if you don't know what you're looking for. So how do we get to that point? We're going to use the filters. So we have three options here along the top of our screen that we can use to filter down this list and find grants for ourselves that work for us very, very quickly. So the first thing is going to be this: I want funding for blank. So this is a very intuitive way to quickly narrow down this list, right? I want funding for marketing. Okay, what do you need? I want funding for hiring a new employee. I want funding for sustainability. So I want funding for environmental sustainability projects. So even if you're brand new to grant funding, this is your first time looking at it, these intuitive filters are going to help you quickly narrow down your list of grants to things that actually work for the projects you're executing on, right? You don't have to be a grant expert to understand that, I want funding for technical product development. You're doing technical product development, you need funding, so that's all you have to do. You click on this and it's going to narrow your list down to a preset, filtered category. Now, beyond that, we've got Show Me. So we have things like Show Me grants over $500,000. Show Me, staff picks. Show Me grants our CTO loves for building tech stacks. So again, this is going to be in line with those quick start filters we saw on our homepage. And again, very intuitive for you to get started and see some select picks that may be right. Now, let's say you are a little bit more familiar with grant funding. You want to get a little bit more granular, and you want to create a set of filters that is specific and unique that you choose. What you're going to do is you're going to click on the More Filters tab, and we have a ton of pick and choose filters that you can use to narrow down this list on your own. So I'm going to go through a process on my own here. Maybe I want to look for a hiring grant for youth employment part-time. So what am I going to do? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on unviewed grants, because maybe I only want to see the grants that I haven't seen before, right? Maybe I already know, I've looked at 50 grants here because I've already just wiped out 50 in the platform. I want to look at brand new grants that I'm unfamiliar with. Next, I want to look at only open grants. So in Pocketed, we show you all the grants you match with, just for the example of CanExport, so that you're prepared and aware of the grants that are available to you and you can apply early when they do open. Next, I'm going to click on grants because I only want to look at grants. I'm going to click on hiring. Then I'm going to click on under 30 to meet that youth criteria. And then I'm going to click on part-time. And so now we can see my list is down to 10 grant programs that I know are eligible to my business and are applicable to the project that I'm looking to execute on, right? So we went very quickly, in less than a minute, from 184 grants to 10 grants that are much more actionable for me to take advantage of. So That's what the all filters tab or the more filters tab is there for. It's to create that granular and specific profile for yourself. So a lot you can do there with all of the filters across the top of the screen. Now, the last thing on this page that I'm going to point out for you is our notifications icon. So you may be thinking, okay, how can I know when new programs are opening or when programs are changing, programs I've saved open again? With Pocketed Plus, you're going to get not only notifications, you're also going to get email alerts when programs are changing in your platform that you have saved. So a very important and helpful feature for you to have when you are going through that grant funding process. Now you'll notice there are some other things we can access on the side left-hand navigation bar. We can make changes to our profile. So our grant profile can be changed at a later date as we continue to grow and scale. We can see grants that we've saved. So if we've found some grants that we really like, we can save them just by clicking on the heart icon, and then we can access those at any time under our Saved Grants tab. Now, the other really helpful thing here is you can actually track your progress through the application process. This is going to help you keep track of what programs you've applied to, what programs you've been approved for, and what programs you are using the funds for. And of course, if you miss out on a grant, you can track that as well. This will help you have a better sense of your grant funding journey, what you've been able to take advantage of in the past, and of course, refer back to those applications in the future to help you have more success again. Now, we've also got resources, and you're able to upgrade to Pocketed Plus here, but these are really the key functionalities that I wanted to highlight for you today. Now, the only other thing I want to mention is that with Pocketed Plus, we actually do have an automated applications tool. And Aria, maybe I'll hand it back to you to quickly talk about that feature, and then we can go right into Q&A.
Yeah, that sounds great. So it should be available later today, actually. So it's a little Chrome extension. You download it, and then it's a little widget, and then it stores all your information. You can move it around your page. So when you're trying to apply on your own, you already have all of these things that you've already written and told us and done kind of there at your fingertips. And it's just easy to copy and paste. It really, really reduces the time. So it's something we were using internally for a long time, and then now we're starting to offer it. That's going to continue to grow and get added features all the time. I just want to address Remy's question here. Is it possible to filter by very specific eligibility requirements, such as pre-revenue status and no current FT employees? That's the list you see. So when you make an account at Pocketed, you are not looking at all of the grant opportunities in Canada. You are looking at the grant opportunities for which you are likely to be eligible. Now, our algorithm does not guarantee that you are absolutely eligible for all of these things, but that's by intention. So there's a couple of reasons for that. One, if there's a grant that you have to be incorporated for 2 years before you're eligible for it, and you've been incorporated for 18 months, we don't want to hide that grant from you until the day that your 2-year mark comes, because you might want to look at that 3 months in advance and say, oh, that is something I want to apply for, and start thinking about it, because that 2-year mark, then it could close in a week after that. And then you're like, now I can't apply, right? So I don't have enough time. So we do try, so that is a little bit fuzzy. So you'll see some, you're like, that's not exactly me, but that list is already things you're very likely already eligible for or will be eligible for soon. So that's kind of taken care of by the time you make that profile and you're in the platform. The other thing I'll point out is there's a difference between eligible and relevant. So the example that I'm using a lot right now is that almost everyone is eligible for this awning grant, like a physical awning for a building. Most people don't want an awning, but some people do. And we don't always know exactly what you'll want. Sometimes people are brick and mortar and they're like, an awning would be fantastic. Then I could make a little cafe out there. Or we have a customer who runs low income housing. They're actually a nonprofit, but they run low income housing. And she was super excited by this awning grant. She's like, I might get awnings for all of the buildings that we're running. And I live in the Okanagan. It's hot here in the summer. She's like, this would be like a way to provide shade in all of these houses. It's covered. So you never know when these weird things are happening, but an awning grant is weird. So one of the features that we're looking to add here pretty quickly is hide this grant. So that if you're seeing something like an awning grant and you're like, that is not me, I'm an e-commerce site, I do not care about awnings, you'll be able to hide that grant and never see it again. So that is coming. But that list already is really curated. So we have thousands of grants in our database, and you're going to see on average 100 to 180, depending on who you are and all the different requirements, where you are, et cetera, et cetera.
Fantastic.
Okay.
So, all right,
Q&A.
how about I read out the Q&A and then you can answer it as we go through
Okay,
it.
good.
And
Yes. And then I don't have to look at the chat and the Q&A. You
yeah,
can do that for me.
you
Ben's
don't have to
taking
worry
care
about
of me.
that. And then, yeah, folks, if you have any questions that are not getting addressed or that you haven't asked yet, you can put that in the Q&A function, or you can put it in the chat. I'm going to start with the Q&A function. So the first one here we have from Padma. Are grants available for purchasing property to expand the business?
Purchasing property sometimes is the answer. So that is called a capital expense. And so there are some filters in there for capital expenditures. Often, if it's a large purchase like that, you're actually going to look at a tax credit. And your company should have a track record, or you're not really going to be eligible for those ones. But if you do have a track record, there often are tax credits available for that kind of capital expenditure.
Great. Okay, thank you. So that one is good. All right, the next one we have from Pinupa. What is the typical reimbursement timeline and cycle?
Yeah, great question. Most grants say they reimburse at the halfway mark. This is for hiring grants. It's usually about 6 months. Sometimes it's 4 months. If it's 4 months, they'll do it at the end. If it's 6 months, they'll do it halfway and at the end. Is it halfway? No, it's 75% of the way through by the time you actually get the money. And for some of the larger grants, they say quarterly. So every 3 months, expect 4. It's the government, they're slow.
That's great. Okay, cool. So those were the two questions that we did have in the Q&A. I'm just going to go back and see if there were any ones that I accidentally marked as answered that that didn't get addressed, and then I'll check the chat right after. So Dr. Cortesha did say, it was I think this is only for Canada. I do US and UK and Canada. Or I think you did answer that right. Just I'll kind of reframe that as a question. Are there grants available for US-based businesses as well as Canadian businesses?
There are, absolutely. So when you set your profile, you set the country. And so if you set your country to Canada, it's going to show you the grants available in Canada. If you set it to US, it'll show you the grants in the US. So we only offer those two right now. More should be coming, but probably it's a year out or so before we're going to expand into other countries.
Amazing. Okay, so we have a question here in the chat. Saud asks, I'm a newcomer to Canada. Can I get coaching in getting to know available funding?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways you can do that. Our office hours run 4 times a week. And so you can come to our office hours and ask questions. That's free of charge. You can also get one-on-one consultations. And so you can do that in a couple of ways. You can purchase that through the platform, and you'll get a granting expert come and talk to you about that. You can also purchase Concierge, which is a subscription. So you got all the stuff in Pocketed Plus, plus some consultations and grant strategy sessions with you in there. So that's the way to do those.
Great. And we can share some links with Greta afterwards so that these can be shared out with the group. Anita asks, are there any grants for pre-revenue projects with social relevance?
Yeah, for sure. Again, it's all about the project, not about your company. So like, I'm a big believer in impact ventures for sure. Grants don't care, mostly, I'll say. They really want to see the project fits their goals. So if your social relevance can be fit into some of their goals, absolutely hang your hat on that. That's part of the positioning. So it's going to depend on the project, and you're going to fit it in there. So either it creates jobs, it's clean tech, it's whatever it is. And then you find a grant that has that as its mandate. So absolutely. But it's about that kind of creative thinking about how do you position that project for this grant to win that money.
Great. Okay, and then we have another question in the Q&A box. Are there grants for manufacturing?
Yes. So a couple of things. Again, depends on your project. So again, there's almost no grant where you're going to type in manufacturing and it's just going to be like, yeah, these are the manufacturing grants. Doesn't work like that. Again, you're going to have to think, what is this going to do? Is it going to reduce emissions? Is it going to help me expand into new markets? What is this money going to be used for in the project? And then you're going to find one of the grants that does that. Is this going to help me like sell into a new market? Can Export. Talk to us. Can Export's currently open. Innovation, we can do that. If you meet the eligibility criteria for that, like get that one done. High likelihood of success. If you, there's also an advanced manufacturing supercluster in Canada. So that would be a good thing to start getting involved in even early. And the reason I say that is, so look up Advanced Manufacturing Supercluster Canada, and you'll get to their website. And the reason I suggest getting involved with them early is often the superclusters like to fund only companies that are fairly far along. But often, or sometimes, if you're kind of in those circles and you're talking to all those companies and you have something cool, you might be able to be a part of someone else's big grant. And you'll also make a lot of connections in the manufacturing area there. So I would suggest becoming a part of that community early on. I would say the same thing about IRAP. They don't focus specifically on manufacturing. It just, what sparked that thought was this idea of like creating a relationship. So all of IRAP funding and programs and mentorship, and they don't often, like, it's a pretty low percentage of companies that IRAP just gives cash to, but they often have like, you pay $500 and you get thousands of dollars of security work done for your website, or you pay $500 and they'll give you $5,000 of lawyer hours, or you pay $500 and they will, set you up with a design team to get your UI UX like unlocked. So there's a lot of other things that they're totally willing to do, but all IRAP funding and programs and mentorship are through your person called an ITA, Innovation Technology Advisor. I think that might be what ITA stands for. And so creating a good relationship with your ITA increases the chances that you'll get access to all of those programs. And so we always recommend, like, as soon as you start, like, call IRAP. You actually physically have to call them. It's like very old school. You physically pick up the phone and call them, and you get an ITA and build that relationship over years, because maybe they're not going to give you money until year 2, but okay, right? See that, get the little bits of money, the $5,000 here, there, and then, scale up. So create that relationship with IRAP for sure.
Amazing. Okay, great. So we do have like 2 last questions in the chat here, but they are pretty specific, and I want to be mindful of time. So what I'm going to say is, for Alexandros and Laura, any further very specific questions you have about your business and projects, please do explore your opportunity to book consultations with our team. You can have those questions addressed there. And if you are able to, you can try to attend our office hours as well. But I'm going to leave those questions for now and instead just put you over to your last slide here, Aria, so we can wrap up.
Yeah, that sounds great. So just a huge thank you to everybody. We love doing this. Innovation Factory has also been so supportive. A lot of the new features that you see on our platform were because some of the mentors at Innovation Factory gave us so